Keisha Williams sat in the cold leather chair across from her husband of 8 years, watching him slide divorce papers across the mahogany table like he was closing a business deal. The conference room at his law firm felt bigger than their entire apartment back when they were young and broke together. Now, at 32, she was about to be broke again, but this time alone. "I'm sorry, Keisha, but we both know this isn't working anymore." David's voice was steady, practiced, the same tone he used when firing employees at his company. "You're just ordinary. I need someone who can keep up with where I'm going in life." The word hit her like a slap. Ordinary. She had heard it before, whispered behind her back at his company parties, spoken by his mother during family dinners, and now thrown at her face by the man who once promised to love her forever. Keisha's hands shook as she stared at the papers. 8 years of marriage reduced to legal documents. 8 years of supporting his dreams while hers gathered dust. 8 years of making herself smaller so he could feel bigger. She thought about their first apartment with the leaky roof, how she worked double shifts at the diner while he finished law school, how she celebrated every promotion, every success, every milestone as if it were her own, how she believed him when he said they were a team. "What about our dreams?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "The house we were going to buy, the family we talked about." David loosened his tie, avoiding her eyes. "Those were different times, Keisha. I was different then. I'm a partner at Morrison and Associates now. I'm dating someone who understands my world, someone who fits." The someone was probably that tall, light-skinned lawyer from his firm. The one who spoke French and had a master's degree from Yale. The one who looked nothing like Keisha with her natural hair, her simple clothes from Target, and her night school diploma. "I won't fight you on the house," David continued, pulling out another set of papers. "But I'm keeping the BMW. You can have the Honda." Keisha looked around the fancy office with its floor-to-ceiling windows and expensive art. She remembered when David used to say her grandmother's cornbread was better than any restaurant. Now, he probably took his new girlfriend to places where cornbread didn't exist on the menu. "I built this life with you," she said, finding her voice. "I worked at that diner until my feet bled so you could go to school. I believed in you when nobody else did." "And I'm grateful for that," David said, checking his expensive watch. "But gratitude isn't love, Keisha. We grew apart. You stayed the same while I evolved." The tears she had been holding back finally came, not just for the marriage that was ending, but for the years she had wasted believing she wasn't good enough. For all the times she had apologized for being herself, for the dreams she had pushed aside to make room for his. As she signed the papers with a trembling hand, Keisha made a silent promise to herself. She would never again let anyone make her feel ordinary. She would never again apologize for who she was. And most importantly, she would never again put her dreams on hold for someone else's definition of success. Walking out of that office building, carrying nothing but a small box of personal items from David's desk and her wounded pride, Keisha Williams had no idea that this would be the last day she would ever feel small. The last day she would let anyone's opinion of her define her worth. The last day she would be ordinary. The divorce papers in her purse felt heavy, but not as heavy as the weight that had been lifted from her shoulders. For the first time in years, Keisha could breathe freely. She could dream again. She could become whoever she wanted to be. But first, she had to figure out who that was. 3 months after the divorce, Keisha found herself living in a one-bedroom apartment in the same neighborhood where she grew up. The walls were thin, the heating barely worked, and she could hear Mrs. Johnson's gospel music through the ceiling every morning at 6. But it was hers, and that made all the difference. She sat at her small kitchen table, laptop open, surrounded by textbooks and business plan templates. The settlement money from David wouldn't last forever, and her job at the local community center barely covered rent and groceries. but for the first time in years, she was excited about tomorrow. "Girl, you need to eat something." Her best friend Tanya stood in the doorway holding a plate of fried chicken and mac and cheese. "You've been working on that computer for 6 hours straight." Keisha looked up from her screen, realizing she had forgotten lunch again. "I'm trying to figure out this business plan. There's this program that gives grants to minority women starting their own companies, but the application is due next week." Tanya sat down across from her, pushing the plate forward. "What kind of business you trying to start?" "Remember how I used to organize everything for David's company events? The conferences, team-building retreats, all that." Keisha took a bite of chicken, suddenly realizing how hungry she was. "Well, I was thinking about starting an event planning company. But not just any events. I want to focus on helping small businesses and community organizations plan professional events they can actually afford." "That sounds amazing," Tanya said, leaning forward. "You were always good at that stuff. Remember when you planned my wedding with like no budget and made it look like we spent $20,000? Keisha smiled, remembering how she had transformed the church basement with simple decorations and smart lighting. "That was fun. I felt like myself for the first time in years that day." "So what's stopping you?" "Money, experience, connections. David always said I was good at party planning, but that wasn't real business." Keisha pushed her laptop away. "Maybe he was right." Tanya reached across and slammed the laptop shut. "Stop right there. David said a lot of things, and most of them were lies designed to keep you small. You organized his entire company retreat for 300 people with zero budget increases, and somehow made it the best event they ever had. You did that, not him. But what if I fail? What if I'm really just ordinary like he said?" "Keisha Williams, I've known you since we were 7 years old. You are many things, but ordinary ain't one of them. You helped your mama raise 4 kids while still making honor roll. You worked 3 jobs to put yourself through community college. You turned David from a broke law student into a successful partner. If that's ordinary, then ordinary is pretty extraordinary." That night, Keisha sat up until 3 in the morning working on her business plan. She researched successful event planning companies, studied their strategies, and slowly began to see what she could offer that they couldn't. She understood small budgets because she had lived them. She knew how to make something beautiful from nothing because she had done it her whole life. She could connect with people because she genuinely cared about their dreams. The next morning, she called her grandmother. "Grandmama, I need some advice." "What's on your heart, baby?" Keisha told her grandmother about the business idea, about the grant application, about her fears and doubts. She talked until her voice was hoarse, pouring out 8 years of buried dreams and forgotten hopes. "You know what your problem is," her grandmother said when Keisha finally stopped talking. "You've been asking the wrong question. Instead of asking if you're good enough, you should be asking if you're ready to work hard enough." "What do you mean?" "Success ain't about being perfect, baby. It's about being persistent. It's about getting up every time you fall down. It's about believing in yourself even when nobody else does. You got all that inside you. You just forgot how to use it." That afternoon, Keisha submitted her grant application. 3 weeks later, she got the call that would change her life. "Ms. Williams, this is Jennifer Chen from the Minority Business Development Association. I'm calling about your grant application." Keisha's heart stopped. "Yes. Congratulations. You've been selected to receive a $25,000 grant to start your business. We were impressed by your vision and your community focus. We'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss next steps." After hanging up the phone, Keisha sat in her tiny apartment and cried. Not tears of sadness this time, but tears of possibility. For the first time since the divorce, she felt like herself again. Strong, capable, and ready to build something beautiful. Williams Event Solutions started in Keisha's living room with a borrowed folding table, a used printer, and a dream that felt too big for the small space. 6 months after receiving the grant, she had planned 12 events, hired her first part-time assistant, and moved into a small office space downtown. Keisha, the Johnson family is here for their consultation, called Nicole, her 22-year-old assistant who had more energy than 3 people combined. Keisha looked up from the vendor contracts she was reviewing. The Johnsons were planning their daughter's college graduation party, and they had a budget of $800 for 50 people. Most event planners would have turned them away, but Keisha saw challenges like this as puzzles to solve. Send them in. Mrs. Johnson walked in holding her husband's arm, both of them dressed in their Sunday best despite it being a Tuesday afternoon. Behind them came their daughter Jasmine, fresh-faced and beaming with the kind of hope that comes with being the first in your family to graduate college. "Ms. Williams, thank you so much for meeting with us, Mrs. Johnson said, settling into the chair across from Keisha's desk. "Jasmine graduates from state in 3 months, and we want to do something special, but we don't have much money saved up." Keisha smiled, remembering her own college graduation when her family had scraped together enough money for a small dinner at Golden Corral. "Tell me about Jasmine. What's she studying? What does she love?" For the next hour, Keisha listened as the family shared stories about Jasmine's journey through college, her love for photography, her plans to become a social worker. She took notes not just about their budget and preferences, but about their dreams, their pride, their hopes for the future. "I have some ideas," Keisha said finally. "What if we use the community center where you go to church? It's beautiful and the rental fee is low. We can transform it with lighting and simple decorations. For the food, instead of catering, what if we do a family-style celebration? Everyone brings a dish, but we coordinate it so it feels intentional and elegant." "That sounds wonderful," Mr. Johnson said, "but will it look professional enough?" Keisha opened her laptop and showed them photos from her previous events. A quinceañera in a church basement that looked like a fairy-tale ballroom. A small business grand opening in a parking lot that felt like a red carpet premiere. A wedding reception in a community center that rivaled expensive hotel venues. "This is what we do," Keisha explained. "We take your vision, your budget, and your love for each other, and we create something beautiful. Not because we spend a lot of money, but because we put a lot of heart into it." By the time the Johnsons left, they had a complete plan for Jasmine's graduation party that would cost $700 and look like $1 million celebration. After they were gone, Keisha sat back in her chair and smiled. This was why she started her business. Not for the money or the recognition, but for moments like this when she could help families celebrate their biggest achievements. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. "Williams Event Solutions, this is Keisha." "Ms. Williams, this is Robert Martinez from Martinez Construction. I got your name from the Johnsons. We're having our annual company picnic in 2 months, and we need someone who can work with a small budget but deliver big results." After taking down his information, Keisha hung up and realized something amazing was happening. Word was spreading. Families and small businesses were talking about her work, recommending her to others. She was building something that mattered. That evening, she called her grandmother to share the good news. "Sounds like you're living your purpose, baby," her grandmother said. "You know what the difference is between you and that ex-husband of yours." "What's that, grandmama?" "He was trying to be important. You're trying to be useful. One of those things lasts a lot longer than the other." As Keisha prepared for bed that night, she looked around her small apartment that she was finally saving enough money to move out of. She thought about David in his big house with his new wife, probably eating expensive dinners and talking about deals and acquisitions. She wondered if he was happy, if all that success had filled the empty spaces in his soul. Then she thought about Jasmine Johnson, who would walk across that stage in 3 months and celebrate with her family in a room full of love and dreams come true. She thought about the small businesses she had helped launch, the families she had helped celebrate, the communities she had helped bring together. Maybe David had been right about one thing, they had grown apart, but he had been wrong about everything else. She wasn't ordinary. She was exactly who she was supposed to be. 2 years after starting Williams Event Solutions, Keisha stood in the main ballroom of the downtown Marriott, overseeing the setup for the largest event her company had ever planned. The annual Black Business Alliance Awards dinner would host over 500 guests, including the mayor, several city council members, and some of the most successful entrepreneurs in the state. "Keisha, the flowers just arrived," Nicole called out, now her full-time operations manager. "And the photographer wants to know if you need any shots of the setup process." "Tell him to capture everything," Keisha replied, adjusting one of the centerpieces. "This is a big moment for us." It was more than big. It was the event that would either establish Williams Event Solutions as a major player in the city's event planning industry, or reveal that she wasn't ready for this level of responsibility. The client was Thomas Washington, a successful real estate developer who had heard about her work through word of mouth. When he called 6 months ago, she almost didn't believe it was real. "I need someone who understands our community," he had said during their first meeting. "Someone who can create an event that celebrates Black excellence without making it feel like a performance for white people. I've seen your work with the Johnson graduation and the Martinez Company picnic. You get it." Now, as she watched her team of 12 employees transform the ballroom into an elegant celebration of achievement and possibility, Keisha felt a pride she had never experienced working on David's corporate events. This wasn't just about creating a beautiful evening. It was about celebrating her community, her people, her culture. "Ms. Williams," a young woman approached, carrying a clipboard and wearing a nervous expression. "I'm Sarah from the catering company. We have a small problem with the main course delivery." Keisha took a deep breath. In event planning, there was always a crisis. The key was staying calm and finding solutions. "What's the situation?" "The delivery truck broke down about 20 miles out. They're sending another truck, but it won't arrive until 30 minutes before service." Keisha checked her watch. 30 minutes wasn't ideal, but it was workable. "Okay, here's what we're going to do. Call the hotel kitchen and ask if we can use their prep space. Then call the catering manager and tell him to have his team ready to plate everything the moment the truck arrives. We'll push cocktail hour back 15 minutes and add an extra speaker to fill the time." "You want me to add a speaker 15 minutes before the event starts?" "I'll handle that part. You focus on the food coordination." Within an hour, Keisha had contacted Reverend Williams from the largest Baptist church in the city, who agreed to give a brief blessing before dinner. She coordinated with the hotel staff to extend cocktail service, notified the photographer about the schedule change, and personally greeted guests to explain the slight delay as a chance to enjoy more networking time. By the time dinner was served, most guests had no idea there had been any problem at all. "Ladies and gentlemen," Thomas Washington said as he took the podium for his opening remarks, "before we begin tonight's program, I want to recognize someone who exemplifies the spirit of this organization." Keisha Williams of Williams Event Solutions didn't just plan this event. She created an experience that celebrates who we are and where we're going. When our evening faced a challenge, she didn't panic or make excuses. She found a solution and made it work. That's the kind of leadership and excellence we're here to celebrate tonight. The applause was thunderous, and Keisha felt tears spring to her eyes. This was what success felt like, not the cold satisfaction of winning, but the warm joy of serving others and being recognized for that service. After the event, as her team packed up equipment and cleaned up the last details, Keisha stood in the empty ballroom and took a moment to appreciate how far she had come. 2 years ago, she had been signing divorce papers and wondering if she would ever feel valuable again. Tonight, she had managed an event that would be talked about for months and had established her company as one of the premier event planning services in the city. Her phone buzzed with a text message from her grandmother. Saw the pictures on Facebook. Proud of you, baby girl. Your grandfather would have loved this. Keisha smiled, thinking about her grandfather who had worked 2 jobs his entire life to provide for his family, but never got to see his dreams fully realized. Tonight felt like a continuation of his legacy, a fulfillment of promises made across generations. As she drove home through the quiet city streets, Keisha allowed herself to dream bigger. She was ready for whatever came next. 5 years after her divorce, Keisha Williams sat in the executive conference room of the downtown office building that housed Williams Event Solutions headquarters. The company now employed 38 people, had offices in 3 cities, and had been featured in Southern Business Magazine as one of the fastest-growing minority-owned businesses in the region. The Henderson Industries proposal is solid, she told her management team, reviewing the documents spread across the polished conference table. It's a 2-year contract for all their corporate events, quarterly meetings, annual conference, client appreciation dinners. The revenue would cover our expansion into Atlanta. What's the timeline for their decision? Asked Marcus, her business development manager. They're interviewing final candidates this week. We should hear back by Friday. Nicole, now her vice president of operations, looked up from her tablet. Keisha, there's something you should know about Henderson Industries. What's that? David works there. He's their new head of legal. The room went quiet. Everyone on Keisha's core team knew her story, how she had built this company from the ashes of a marriage that ended with her being called ordinary. They had watched her work 18-hour days, take risks that scared them all, and turn rejection into motivation. That doesn't change anything, Keisha said calmly. We're the best choice for this contract, and we're going to present our proposal like we always do, with professionalism and confidence. But inside, her heart was racing. She hadn't seen David in 3 years, not since they had run into each other at the grocery store, and he had made awkward small talk about her little event planning hobby. Now, he would be sitting across from her in a business meeting, possibly having a say in whether she won the biggest contract of her career. 3 days later, Keisha walked into the Henderson Industries building wearing her best suit and carrying a presentation that represented 5 years of hard work and growth. Her team followed behind her, rolling cases of materials and equipment for their pitch. The conference room was full of executives, including CEO Jonathan Henderson, CFO Patricia Morrison, and several department heads. And there, at the far end of the table, sat David. He looked older, more tired than she remembered. His expensive suit couldn't hide the stress lines around his eyes or the way his shoulders seemed to carry invisible weight. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mr. Henderson began, "we're here to review proposals from Williams Event Solutions for our corporate event planning needs. Ms. Williams, the floor is yours." For the next 45 minutes, Keisha and her team presented a comprehensive proposal that covered everything from budget optimization to cultural sensitivity training for corporate events. They showed photos and videos from their most successful projects, shared testimonials from satisfied clients, and outlined a detailed plan for handling Henderson Industries' specific needs. David didn't say a word during the entire presentation, but Keisha could feel his eyes on her. When she talked about building community through corporate events, when she explained how proper planning could increase employee engagement, when she demonstrated the cost savings her company had achieved for other clients, She saw something in his expression that looked like recognition, and maybe regret. "Ms. Williams," said Patricia Morrison, "your proposal is impressive, but Henderson Industries has worked with the same event planning company for 15 years. Why should we change now?" "Because the world has changed," Keisha replied. "Your employees are more diverse than ever. Your clients expect more than just good food and pretty decorations. They want authentic experiences that reflect your company's values. We don't just plan events, we create connections. We help you show your people that you see them, value them, and want to celebrate their achievements in meaningful ways." After the presentation, as Keisha's team packed up their materials, David approached her. "Keisha, could I have a word?" They stepped into the hallway, away from the conference room. "You were impressive in there," he said quietly. "I had no idea your company had grown so much." "Thank you," she replied, keeping her voice professional. "I owe you an apology. The way our marriage ended, the things I said. I was wrong. You were never ordinary. I was just too blind to see who you really were." Keisha looked at the man she had once loved more than life itself. The man who had made her feel small and worthless. The man who had unknowingly pushed her toward the life she was meant to live. "David, I forgave you a long time ago," she said. "Not for you, but for me. Carrying anger was just weighing me down." "Are you happy?" he asked. Keisha thought about her team of employees who looked up to her, the families whose celebrations she had made special, the businesses she had helped succeed, the communities she had brought together. She thought about the little girl from the neighborhood who still lived in her grandmother's house, but now owned a company that employed dozens of people and served hundreds of clients. "Yes," she said simply. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." 2 weeks later, Keisha got the call from Henderson Industries. They had chosen Williams Event Solutions for their corporate event planning needs. The contract was worth $1.2 million over 2 years and included an option for renewal. As she hung up the phone and shared the news with her celebrating team, Keisha realized that David had actually done her a favor all those years ago. By telling her she was ordinary, by making her feel small, by pushing her out of his life, he had forced her to discover who she really was, and who she really was turned out to be extraordinary. That evening, she called her grandmother to share the good news. "Grandmama, remember when you told me that success isn't about being perfect, it's about being persistent?" "I remember." "Well, I think I finally understand what you meant. I'm not successful because I never failed. I'm successful because I never stopped trying." "That's my girl," her grandmother said, and Keisha could hear the smile in her voice. "Your grandfather always said that sometimes you have to lose everything to find out who you really are." "Sounds like you found yourself just fine." As Keisha sat in her beautiful office, looking out at the city lights and thinking about all the dreams still left to chase, she knew her grandmother was right. She had found herself, and what she had found was far from ordinary. She was a woman who had turned heartbreak into purpose, rejection into motivation, and doubt into determination. She was exactly who she was meant to be. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog.